Recording in progress.
On.
Good to go.
Are we good to go?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Economic Development Subcommittee meeting for December 18th, 2024 to order. Time being 6:47.
5:48.
Sorry. I'm a little tired. 5:48. I sound like Glenn now. 5:48. The meeting will be held at the Municipal Building, Council Chambers, second floor. A note to all residents: all citizens are welcome to attend public meetings in person. To view the live meeting remotely, citizens are encouraged to watch the live stream on the Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel or the Live Town Hall TV YouTube channel. Right? No? No. Or live broadcast on Comcast Channel 9, Verizon Channel 29. Meetings are also archived by Franklin TV on the Franklin Town Hall YouTube channel and shown on repeat on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29 for those who missed the live meeting. To listen to the meeting remotely, citizens may call in using this number, 1-929-205-6099. This will not permit participation in the meeting. To participate in the meeting remotely, citizens are able to join a Zoom webinar using the information provided on the agenda for the meeting tonight on the Town Hall website. The Zoom webinar ID number is 832-1910-2332. All participants who wish to speak during the webinar must enter their full name and email address when joining the webinar. All participants will be automatically muted upon joining the webinar. In order to speak, participants who have entered full name and email address will need to select the raise hand function to request to be unmuted. All speakers will be required to state their full name and street address before commenting. All the counselors are here in the chambers with me tonight. And let's just get to the agenda. Agenda item number 1 is the MBTA Communities Update. Amy.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm going to pass it off to Brian and Amy.
I was going to say, Jamie's not here, it's Amy. We're
For
gonna
both
go,
of these updates.
we're going to
so
go
we-
right to Brian and Amy.
Yes.
For both?
For the-
Okay.
For the planning.
So Brian and Amy, welcome. And this is great. We got some updates coming to us, so let us hear it.
All right. Evening. First of all, a lot of people have heard about the MBTA communities issue. Some people don't know anything about it, but they've heard about it. It's same thing with the new style property. We've known it's been a problem or an issue in town for 20 plus years. Not that many people know about it. So that's what I was hoping to do tonight, was to give you a little more information than they normally would get. And if I give you an update on this, oh, everything's going great and that's it. But
Yeah.
instead, I'll give you more details, explain some of the issues, because there are a lot of issues there. It's been ongoing for a long time, and so maybe I can, by the time the presentation's done, in probably half hour at the very most, we can take questions and go forward, okay?
Okay, great.
All right. So, starting with Brownfield project. The Brownfield site is on 21 Grove Street. It's not a very pretty site. In fact, it's probably one of the worst in town. And it has contaminants in the soil and in the groundwater that are probably worse than most places in town also. Just real quick, former manufacturing property. It's in southern Unionville. People don't think of that far down Grove as actually Unionville section of town, but it was right on the tracks. Has a long industrial history, textiles, paint, costume, jewelry, most recently. A variety of contaminants related to industrial processes within the soil, groundwater, and building materials. It's currently a town-owned property. And town-related environmental assessment and remediation activities began in 2006. EPA remediation activities occurred previously. This is a diagram from 1929, and I put it up there. It's not easy to read from a distance, but at that time, it was a mill complex with about 10 structures. It may have been 11, but it was at least 10. The main mill is right in the middle of it, of the picture there. And the so-called old mill, which is on the bottom of the slide, which is attached to a small office and a garage, are the buildings owned by the town now that need to be demolished.
At the very bottom?
At the very bottom, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Those, that's the, what I call it New Style Building 2, is the old mill and the two little additions there.
Mhm.
You'll see a picture a little bit later, and I can explain you what you're looking at now. But most of the, all of that property at one point was owned by one property owner. It has been divided into pieces, and the town ended up with 2 parcels that were contaminated. There are other parcels that are still being utilized, other properties being utilized that were once part of that property. This is a picture from 1970. It's when New Style Company and Image Jewelry was at their prime at the time, or I should say right before EPA started going after them,
Yeah.
basically. They were the last industrial user. Most small structures in the previous diagram have been removed by that time. They use cyanides, metals, chlorinated solvents, petroleum in their industrial processes, and I find out a little bit more, quite a bit more actually that. They left the property in pretty bad shape. So in 2002 and 2005, the town obtained 2 tax title properties. We know them as Lot 22 and Lot 27. The 2 parcels each had its own former industrial building on it. Both buildings were condemned in October of 2005. The larger of the 2 buildings, Building 1, which was the 2-story building with a footprint of 12,000 plus square feet, was the main mill structure. Building 1 was demolished by the town in 2012 as part of an EPA-funded brownfield remediation project. The remaining building, Building 2, is adjacent to Mine Brook on the west side of the property. Manufacturing processes at the site included woolen manufacturing, paint manufacturing, and electroplating and metals finishing, which is what the jewelry company did, and they utilized a lot of chemicals to do that. Chemicals used included lead, nickel, chromium, beryllium, acids, bases, cyanides, chlorinated solvents, and petroleum products. Note that there were no use of oil or hazardous materials used there since 1989. That was when they formally moved out. The primary environmental concerns on the site are chlorinated VOC. Now, I put off to the side the acronym meanings in case anybody doesn't, just so you know that VOC is a volatile organic compound. TCE and PCE are 2 different types of VOC, and then PAH is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon, which is a variety of things, but it's also, it's in asphalt and a lot of different things like that. Anyway, so we have chlorinated VOC in the shallow overburdened groundwater. We have it in the deep bedrock aquifer in that area. We have PAH compounds in the surface soil. We have it in the sediment. We have beryllium and lead in the surface soil, and we have hazardous building materials, including lead and asbestos. So real quick, a substantial amount of assessment activities have been conducted. EPA removed barrels of solvents and other hazardous materials roughly around 1990. 5 underground storage tanks were removed from the site between 1990 and 2007. One of the tanks is reportedly contained solvents. EPA-funded environmental assessment activities managed by Norfolk County for us were conducted in 2006 through 2008. These activities included soil borings, monitoring well installation, 3 rounds of groundwater monitoring, sediment sampling, and surface water samples. Additional phase 2 environmental assessment was conducted in 2009, 2010. That's when I started getting involved with the work in that area. Groundwater contamination could not be properly assessed and remediated, so we had to rip down building 1 to actually figure out what was underneath the site. So that was, we applied for an EPA grant for that purpose. So the building was demolished in 2012 as part of a remediation project funded by $250,000 EPA brownfield cleanup grant and town matching funds. Hazardous building materials were removed, concrete and brick were crushed and used to fill in the building foundation. During demolition process, a mill race was uncovered beneath the building. Now, a mill race is basically a little tunnel, if you will, and it goes between a water body, goes through a tunnel, and it dumps out into another water body. So in this case, the water came from Beaver Pond, and it went through the site, under the manufacturing site, under the buildings, and it dumped out into Mine Brook on the other side of the site. It actually went under the 2 buildings that we have owned in the past, Building 1 and Building 2. So when we were demolishing Building 1, they came across it and they realized, wow, we got a mess here. So basically, I'll show you I'll show you a picture in a minute, but basically, it was used, whether the last company there used it for this purpose or not, but many times what happened was they opened up a hatch. They dump in their waste, they close it, it goes away, and they've been doing that for hundreds of years in this country. Right, and it goes right into Mine Brook, correct, yeah. But in addition to the fluid going down, the contaminants soak into the ground. So where the mill race was, we had to dig the whole area out and get rid of it. In addition to the demolition work, and on the site, by the way, I don't know if I covered that. Oh yeah, down the bottom, there were approximately 526 tons of contaminated environmental media, all right, which is soil and the raceway materials that were found. 407 tons of soil containing metals and chlorinated VOC, and 116 tons of soil sediment containing metals and PAH. So by the way, they went to, the 407 tons went to New York, and the others went up to New Hampshire. But into specific processing facilities, and where they deal with these things.
And just get dumped.
They don't just dump it; they dump it, and they know where it is, and they can process it if ever in the future they decide to do that. All I know is we pay for a good chunk of money every time a truckload goes out the door. So. A couple pictures. On the left is the day we started demolishing Building 1. It was going down real quick, real fast. That was about an hour into the process on the left there. On the right, we're talking about, 5 weeks later. That's a picture of the mill race. It's hard to read, really hard to see it, but right there's like an arch, if you will. In that area, you can see under where the road is there. You can see a little arch, black arch area. That's basically what it is. It's about maybe this wide and this tall. It's an arched area. It's an arched area made of stone, and it goes under the buildings, under the road, and it dumps into Mine Brook. So this area here, we did dig all this out and remove that from the site. But where we stopped at a certain point, and part of the project in the future will be to dig out the remainder of the thing. We're going to have to demolish the other building first. All right, so just to give you a quick idea, some additional environmental assessment activities since I've been here. EPA targeted brownfield assessment project. They installed 12 additional monitoring wells. Had 2 rounds of sampling. EPA soil and vapor intrusion study was done in 2013. A passive soil gas survey, 2015. We paid for phase 2 environmental assessment, and we also developed a phase 3 document in last year and this year with ARPA funding. Currently, the property has 21 active monitoring wells. We actually had about 5 that were decommissioned because the areas were ripped up or whatever the case in the past. But the 21 there, 5 are, I think 6 actually are brand new. The others we've been utilizing first. Full extent of the groundwater contamination, even though we get 21 active wells, it's still unknown. We don't know exactly where exactly the contamination is coming from, where exactly it's going.
Right.
And
Are all the wells that we have, the monitoring wells, show that it's contaminated?
it shows different levels of contamination in different areas, as they all do. And some of them have different kind of contaminants in it that are not shown in others. So if you map it all out, you say, okay, see, we cannot go onto another property and put in a monitoring well, right? I mean, and
Yeah.
check out, what it is there. And it's in their interest essentially, like if we go put a well in there, oh yeah, go ahead and put some wells in, and they find contamination, then they have
They
a
have to take
brownfield
care of it,
site
right?
of their own to do.
Right.
So they have no interest in doing that, and I don't blame them. However, I'll get to in a minute, the property to the south of us here and the property to the north are both properties that were part of the New Style mill site, essentially the whole site. Both of them probably do have contaminants on it. But I can't really deal with that unless, the town doesn't want to get into other properties. And, we could, we can go up and buy them out. No, we're not going to be doing that, right?
No, we're not.
So, yeah, there are contaminants in the area that we really don't know. We've done our best to figure out where the contaminants are coming from and where they're going, but honestly, we don't actually know. And we also have another building on site, and underneath that site is a substantial amount of contaminants. We do know that, so we're going to demolish the building and then assess what's under there and dig out as much as we can. Dig out the right into the mill race also, right? And we'll probably have as clean a site as we're probably going to get. But there's other things that we can do in the future if we need to, but that's where we're going in the near future with this, all right? So just to give you an idea, chlorinated VOCs are present in the shallow soil to the east of Building 2 and in shallow ground well to the northeast, east, and south of the building. We're unable to assess contamination within the footprint of Building 2. It's not safe to do so. It's unknown if there are contamination on privately owned properties both north and south of the town's New Style property. As I mentioned, those 2 parcels were once part of the larger New Style mill complex. There's the Building 2, okay? Or what's left of it. So off to the right side, there's the larger structure is not town-owned. That is the World Marble and whatever, okay?
Granite.
Right. Our building is attached to it, okay? All right, so that's a garage area. I mentioned in the 1929 diagram there were 3 buildings. The garage, it was the last one I mentioned. In the middle is the office building, the white building there. And to the left, where you really can't really see a building anymore, that is a foundation. That is the so-called old mill, which was old at the time of 1929. So there had been processes at one time or another going on there since about 1900, maybe a little before that actually. And there probably before that there were probably grist mills or any number of things like that on the water. But anyway, so there's the 3 sections of our so-called Building 2. It'll all have to be removed, and we'll have to dig out in front of right where the doorway in the white building is there. If you go straight back to us, that's basically where the mill race is. It's under the ground, okay? It continues going on underneath that building, and at one point, it went right to the water in there, but over probably 40 years ago, that now they put in an addition on the backside that you can't really see. So at that time, they dug the area out and put in foundation, so We may find we may find traces with there under the foundation. I'm not sure.
And in front of that, there's a fence,
Yeah.
right? And in front of that, is that town property too? Is that somebody
Yes,
else's?
all the way
property?
from, you can, the first photo I showed was a picture of me. It was taken from the road,
Yeah,
basically. That's the exact same photo as that.
okay,
Right from the road, all the way
Right from the
back
road.
to beyond these buildings, and then the Mine Brook is right in the back of that.
okay.
All right, so the building's unsafe, it's a blight in the neighborhood, the town's unable to assess the environmental contamination, we cannot access under the building safely. Building 2 is attached to the adjacent building at 15 Grove Street. The attached building is owned by World Marble and Granite. Problems with the structural integrity of that privately owned building have been identified. We attempted a demolition of our property in 2015 to 2017 range, okay? At that time, we put the RFP out, we got people interested, and then we found out that the adjacent building had a big crack up the back of it. And if we were to take down our building, their damage would get more and more and more. We didn't want to get into liability issues. We stopped the project and came back to begin with. We were told that structural engineering is going to cost a certain amount, and the improvements are going to cost that. So it got to a point, instead of getting a done project years ago,
Mhm.
we had to stop at that time. And we started looking at other options, and, well, that's another issue. So what we have to do is to make constructional improvements which need to be engineered and constructed prior to the demolition of Building 2. I want to show you a picture. This was taken 7 or 8 years ago, so right now it doesn't look that good. Right there, on the right side, where the arrow pointing to that wall, that is the common wall. That goes
Okay.
all the way to the back of the building, and it's shared with the adjacent property owner. So when we're done, that common wall has to still be standing, and it has to be structurally sound, otherwise, we're creating problems where we don't need to. So, like I said, Building 2 cannot be demolished without first designing and implementing structural improvements to the World Marble and Granite's adjacent building. Okay, so current work, we received a $500,000 brownfield grant to remediate the site. Remediation designing engineering contract has been, we have that. We have Beta working on that for us. By the way, the contract for engineering, remediation design, all of that is over $500,000. A lot of money to do that stuff. The structural assessment, and we're going to need to have a detailed communications agreement with the owner, and we're working on that now. We're also working on the actual assessment. We have a date in mid-January, which they'll be going in to do the assessment work on the building next door. In February, March, they'll be designing the improvements, and we'll do our permitting, including a notice of intent, demolition permitting in April, May. Structural improvements, I'm guessing, will be in June 2025. Building demolition will occur as soon after that, probably not July to September range of 2025. They'll be designing a remediation project throughout the year, but they should be done they'll be ready to go whenever we have a building down and another contractor out there. And the remediation of the environmental contamination is likely will start late next year, less than a year from now, hopefully, and then into 2026. Okay? It will cost more money than we currently have, but we're working on more grants. EPA and Mass Development both have programs. We'll keep working on it and see what happens. Okay. That's it with NewSouth update. It's a lot more information I've ever given on it, and I just wanted you to understand some of the complexities of project. Being stuck with our building is stuck to another property and the other properties got damaged. I mean,
So complicated.
it's very complicated,
Yeah.
yeah. And so but we need to get the building out of the way so we can figure out what's wrong with it, scoop out some of the contaminated soil, get it off-site.
Right.
We can't get rid of the rest of the mill race until the building's out of the way.
Yeah,
There are 2 or 3 other locations where we know are contaminated on our property that we'd like to also scoop out at the same time, get better rates if you do it all at the same time.
right.
So, yeah, it's one thing after another that keeps stretching this thing back and back and back. But I hope that the game plan we have now will work and we'll keep
Yeah.
going.
If, I just want to thank you for the update on all that information. Like, I remember from maybe 2015 on,
Yeah,
but I didn't know about the other stuff.
yeah.
And it seems like, even though it's all complicated, that you found a way to get through it all, which is amazing.
Well,
I know we have to, I know we have to,
We're not
but,
through it yet, but, yeah. But anyway,
but you
what's
have
interesting.
a good handle
Yeah.
on it, and you know, and
Yeah.
it just, every time, I feel like every time we come up with you come up with a plan that says, this is gonna be it, and there's some other thing that gets thrown in
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, what's interesting, when we did put it out to bid for a demolition contractor,
Mhm,
we were just gonna remove the building itself,
mhm.
right? We had the money set aside to do that, we were all set, but then it gets the fact that the next building is structurally unsound, we can't do that. So we had to rethink, okay, what are we gonna do, because we don't have enough money, so we actually came up with a request for proposal for purchase and and they would have to remediate it, and they would have, redevelop the site, the whole deal. I don't care, we're gonna get a buck for a property, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
I would-
they dealing with it, right? Reached agreement with the adjacent property owner.
Right.
They put in, they put in, 2 years later, they hadn't implemented their project. So we ended up with the property back.
Right.
At
I
that
remember,
point,
that I remember.
at that point, in I think it was 2017,
17.
2018, whatever, then we have to rethink the thing again. What are we gonna do? We still don't have money for this. We've been applying for brownfield grants, we didn't get it. So then we looked at the neighborhood. Are we going to, maybe we redevelop the whole neighborhood? Maybe this is part of a development project on the backside where
Right.
there's almost 9 acres of land back there. And anyway, that one
Yeah.
really didn't flow through as well as possible. At one point, I had every adjacent property owner kind of in agreement,
Mhm.
and then it fell apart.
Yeah.
And what are you gonna do? So then,
Keep
well,
moving on.
apply for grants, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
yeah, so that's basically the way this project is going.
Yeah.
And, we just keep, okay, that's not working, we do something else.
Well, thanks for the
Well,
update. Does anybody have
hopefully
any
this works this
questions
time, right?
for Brian?
I'm
Patrick? Is it
So-
okay if we do questions before we
Oh, I
call
don't
it?
care,
Yeah.
sure.
So that Marble Company, that's an active business,
Oh, yeah.
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 and there's people working there every day?
Yeah, that's their processing plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their office is across the street.
Is
Yeah.
it safe for them there?
It is safe, I mean, yes. You're talking about, there could be, VOCs, the fumes and things like that
They shouldn't
coming up
drink the
through.
water probably, right?
Our property itself is not contaminated
Okay.
enough to bother them.
Okay.
If they have contaminants on their own property,
That's
that's their issue,
Yeah.
but our property is not
Okay.
contaminating them in any way right now.
And is one of the other properties the judo, the karate place, is that one of the other?
Oh, the other one on the south side is the karate, yes,
Yeah.
that was also part of the
Okay.
mill, yep. And also across the street where the Marble Company has their office,
Mhm.
that parcel also was part of that was because Grove Street wasn't there when the thing, the Grove Street actually is between where our 2 buildings actually were. And they state or whoever came in and straightened out Grove Street, and that's where, so that's when things get divided into pieces.
Okay.
But that property across the street is actually, was their shipping right on the tracks. They shipped out all
Right.
their things from that location.
Anybody else? Kobe?
So what's covered under the 500,000 EPA?
The $500,000, when we just got it, I'm like, oh, thank God we can get this project done,
I remember.
right?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, several bids or several companies that have come through, 2 were formal bids. And one company called me up and said, listen, it's gonna cost almost $300,000 here just to design stuff alone. We can't get this, can't guarantee that $500,000 is gonna cover it. We're not gonna bid on it. I said, okay, whatever. We took the best price that we could, and EPA is saying, go forward, and they have our blessings, and we're gonna do as much of the project as we possibly can. And we will also be looking for other grant money, other sources of funds to get the thing done. We know the building's coming down, and the structural improvements, of course, before that'll have to get done.
It's under the 500,000.
With the 500 grand, that's likely to happen. And as far as additional assessment work, there is targeted brownfield funding, which we've gotten previously from the same, actually, property is from the EPA. They're pretty good usually. One EPA project funding supporting another, basically.
Right.
Right? And so that will likely happen. We've got to get that done within the next few months. We'll get that application done. We may also apply for another brownfield $500,000, but I don't think we'll need that. What we will need to do is the targeted assessment, and hopefully not more than a couple $100,000 after that for remediation, but we'll see how it goes. And I talk numbers now, but I mean, I remember in 2017 I had some real good numbers, and then I'm thinking now, well, just triple that.
Right.
You know, it just is crazy. Anyway.
I'm assuming we've at least thought through just acquiring the property next to it. Why, how much easier would it be? I mean, certainly never want to slow down, an operating and active and lively business. But if that's preventing multiple active and lively businesses from existing, how did we look into that? What was the thoughts there?
I think that if you were to ask, say, Mark Sorrell, Mark, should we go buy another brownfield? I think he would shoot you. I mean, I'm sorry. We don't want more brownfields. The issue is this, that yes, if you want to clean up a site and you get enough partners in there and the town gets involved, great. But you don't want to be the lone partner cleaning up an additional brownfield site, okay? It just is going to add 5 more years onto a project or more. And are you going to get a property that's of value at all in the end? You're going to clean up the environmental contamination, hopefully. But the property is basically going to be sold for $1 at the end, because you can't do anything with it other than put a concrete slab and a building on top of it, or industrial uses or whatever, or a parking lot. It's not in the town's
Really?
financial interest, and it's liability-wise taking on much more than I think the town would ever want to take on. But as counselors, you're decision makers, and if you want to go forward with something like that, then you have the right to do so. You're right to. But I honestly, just getting this property under control will be a big win for the town. And if the adjacent property owner has his own environmental problems, and he probably does, then that's his issue. It's not mine for sure, but I don't think it's the town's right now either.
It's not the town's right now. Here's my fear. It's not the town's right now. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's not the town's right now, but the new style property just was that. It was a private property that was contaminating and then became a brownfield and it seems like it's just going to happen again right next door, so why not just do it all at once together where it has more value, where we can then sell, or we're more likely to work with a private partner as opposed to like half of it where we're going to say like, okay, even if you take this over, you're going to have to deal with this like shared wall with a partner. Like, yes, I don't want to touch any of this, but we're here, and
Sure.
the same reason why it was justified to to remediate the current property, why won't it be necessary to remediate the next property? It's a headache we save now, but it sounds like a future headache.
Sure.
Yeah.
If the person that owns that decides he's got a brownfield on his hands and he doesn't want to deal with it, and he decides, okay, I'm not going to pay taxes anymore, and I'm going to run out, you don't have to take the property for taxes. We didn't have to take the last one for taxes. When we did, we should have left it with the bank, and the bank would have had the problem. But they would have been responsible for cleaning up the site, not the town, right?
Do they on some reasonable timeline? Like at the end of the day, it's still like the blight's still there, the lack of
Yeah.
economic development is still there.
Yeah.
It's nice
I
to not
mean,
have the liability.
What I'm trying to say is, unless we go after the property and say, hey, we want this property, we want your problems, we're gonna clean up your problem, and unless you do that, it's gonna take multiple years to get to a point where maybe that person finds that he can't utilize the property for whatever reason, or, whatever, he's gone out of business, and then you do, 21E on the site, and they find out that, oh yeah, there's some problems here. That's all the private property owner's issues. When it gets to a point where it is actually a environmental contamination site that is hurting health of the community, that's when the Board of Health goes in,
Right.
right? That's when the state gets pulled into this. It's not necessarily when the town says, okay, we want to redevelop the site for you, because it happens all over the place. I understand that. But usually a bigger property, which can be turned into, 50,000 square foot industrial structure, or multi-use structure, or whatever. This is a very small, not even acre parcel of land we're gonna end up with. And we have Minebrook running on two sides of it,
Okay.
right? It's just the economic value is not there for the town,
Okay.
in my opinion, and I think that you might find that to be the case now. But it doesn't, keep asking those great questions, though.
No, that's
Really.
right, thank you.
Really, it really, what you're doing, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It's just that,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the right thing for this time.
Great, thank you.
Brian, anything?
No, I'll just keep this moment. I was gonna tell a little war story about that building.
Okay.
We don't know.
Okay, thank you, Brian. You want to start the MBTA communities?
Sure.
All right, MBTA Communities Compliance, Section 3A of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A. Housing Choices Section, the Economic Development Bond Bill 2021 requires towns, cities, and MBTA districts to zone for by right multifamily housing. In general, MBTA communities will have a zoning bylaw that provides for at least one district of reasonable size in which multifamily housing is permitted as of right. In general, 3A districts of reasonable size will have a minimum gross density of 15 housing acres per acre and be located within a half a mile of a commuter rail station or other resource, depending on what type of community you have. We have a commuter rail community. MBTA communities that fail to comply with Section 3A requirements are not eligible funds from Housing Choice Initiative, the Local Capital Projects Fund, or MassWorks Infrastructure Program, and quite a few other programs that were recently added to the list. The state came up with a compliance guidelines for multifamily zoning districts created by the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, or HLC, in consultation with MBTA and MassDOT. Guidelines determine if an MBTA community is in compliance with Section 3A. They were released in August 2022, and then there have been at least a couple of updates. And guidelines contain a compliance model spreadsheet that each community is supposed to utilize to prove that they have what they need. So this is taken from the 2022 compliance guidelines. The minimum of multifamily unit capacity for the community needs to be 1,883 units. The minimal land area has to be 50 acres or more, and the percent of the district to be located in the station area is 75%. Of course, that 1,883 units is 15% of our 2020 US Census, the number of housing units. That's how they come up with that. And the station area, where you need 75% of those units, is a half-mile circle, or radius, around the MBTA commuter rail station. So to meet this Section 3A multifamily zoning requirements, Franklin was required to amend its zoning bylaws to assure it has one or more zoning districts that are in total. It would allow a minimum multifamily unit capacity of 1,883 housing units by right, 75% of which must be located not more than half a mile from the station. To assess our compliance, our staff talked with MAPC, they got involved, they ran through the model and things of that nature. And they utilized, for the compliance model, our 3 zoning districts that did allow multifamily zoning of one type or another at that time. General residential 5, C1, commercial 1, and a downtown commercial district. When the compliance regulations came out in August 2022, Franklin had no zoning districts that met Section 3A district communities multifamily zoning requirements. So the main reasons for the non-compliance, there are 3 general reasons. First of all, the by right multifamily housing in C1 and general residential 5 was not allowed. By right was not allowed. You needed a special permit from the planning board. The compliance model spread also uses data used based on assumptions about a community's zoning, resulting in a lower minimum multifamily unit capacity than it's actually possible. When we would run the numbers, forget about the model, but actually look at the actual zoning, the actual parcel specific breakdown, we had substantially more units in the district than that spreadsheet would ever give us. And that's still the case today, by the way. So some of the things that we could change, of course, the impervious coverage allowed in general residential 5 was going to get us some more units. By the way, that only got us less than 100 units when we ran the numbers before and after that change. The downtown commercial zoning district does allow multifamily housing by right up to 1 housing unit per 2,000 square feet of lawn area. It must be located on the first floors above the street level floor. And the original compliance guidelines totally disqualified anything that required the first floor commercial. And so in other words, housing only in the upper floors, didn't allow that. Later, the updates to the compliance model did allow communities to require housing be only in the upper floors, but the community must apply for a mandatory mixed-use district. And so that's another application that you had to run through, and we had to make specific changes to our zoning to meet those that guideline. So this is just a really kind of a lot of words here. These are all some of those. These are the zoning amendments we ran through and council approved over the last couple of years. The top 3 are the big ones that relate to the MBTA communities. First, 23889. It allows multifamily housing in the C1 and GR5 zoning district by right up to 1 unit per 2,250 square feet. The next one, 23898R, made changes in our dimensional regs. It increased the maximum impervious coverage in general residential 5. And then the third one there is a very recent one, last August, I believe it was approved. Made changes in our parking section of the zoning bylaw, and it removed minimum parking space requirements for non-residential uses in mixed-use developments. All the others are great, but they didn't do anything to change the numbers, but they're all important things, and I'm glad they're all done. So we do a fall 2024 assessment, and MAPC and my department have reassessed the town's MBTA community's compliance with the updated zoning by removing the parking requirements of commercial uses in the downtown commercial zoning district. The town had a qualifying mandatory mixed-use district. If the downtown district was a regular qualifying multifamily district, it would have added 556 units to the town's MBTA compliance district. However, MMUs are they only allow 25% of the total of the towns. So we can only gain 471 units by that. So, but actually it's an offset. So basically that 471 units, or 25%, is a deduction from the 1,883 units that are required. So it drops down to we only needed, not including the downtown now, where we need to get 1,412 units, okay? We applied for that determination and received notice from the state lately. It was approved, the MMU. So we have that officially approved now. Now this is the town's MBTA community map. Right in the middle of downtown commercial is an MMU. It's not actually considered a MBTA district, if you will, but that's okay. We got rid of 400 and some odd units that we don't need to get. The brownish color is the general residential 5, the pinkish color is C1. So off to the side, the math is that we started out with needing 883. The MMU, which could have gotten 556 units, we were allowed to subtract 470 units. We ended up with needing 1,413 units, and then the two districts that we do have, general residential 5, 947 units, C1 is 537 units, total 1,484 units. Hallelujah, right? So, we sent the application and we're still waiting to find out.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say, we sent it in, and ta-da!
No, it's not that automatic. The other one was, actually the MMU application was within, what, a week or two? It was quick.
Okay.
Yeah, but the other one, it may take months because everybody else is sending it.
Everybody else has theirs in.
Yeah. So, that's the update. I'm feeling good, the application for, this is done, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we've got the documents in finally after all this time. Made some good changes in the zoning bylaws.
Yep.
And so I don't think the town has to worry about too much because if the other community's worried about it, more than we are right now. So we'll see how it goes. But you should be hearing soon one way or the other.
Oh, good. I was hoping that you were gonna that there was really gonna be a next slide that said, we're compliant now, yeah.
No, sorry.
We're officially compliant, I mean,
Yeah, well, we are
Yeah.
compliant, but they just have to tell us that.
yeah, that's the thing, right? We just have to wait. But, I look at that list you showed of all the zoning changes, and I'm like, yeah, like, we got a lot of stuff done.
Yeah.
It's good stuff, too.
Accessory uses.
Yeah.
Inclusionary zoning, mixed use definition,
Yeah.
and things of that nature.
Yeah. It's so cool. I love that. I love looking back sometimes. Saying, like, because sometimes it feels like we're not doing anything, right? And then you look back at that, like, wow, like, we got a lot of stuff done. And this is great, right?
2 years in the making.
Yeah, at least 2
I
years.
think, yeah, to get to this point, and it's very exciting.
Well, maybe even 3 then. When we started, the Franco for All project was.
Yeah, and then
yeah,
in the
3
middle of
years
that,
ago.
and then in the middle of that, the MBTA communities came out,
Right.
and,
Mhm.
it's been great.
Yeah, it's good. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for all this. Quick note, are we gonna post this somewhere, just have it on our site? You put a lot of work into
I'll get this up on.
documenting
Yeah, okay.
what's happened, and it's helpful to have just
Sure.
that
Yeah,
somewhere, especially because it wasn't in the agenda. It's just a good documentation of what's been happening on these two fronts. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, this is cool. I do think we gotta be compliant, but, I think I agree with everything, that's here. And we've been getting some positive press around how we, tackled it. Jonathan Burke, one of the largest, urbanist commentators in Mass, just put out a positive thing on Franklin, calling us a gold standard for how to pass MBTA communities. And Congress for New Urbanism reached out to me. They're looking to do, they have their national convention in Providence this year.
Yeah.
They're looking to do as one of their offsite visits, a tour of downtown Franklin to talk about our MBTA communities compliance. So some positive press on multiple fronts around that. So proud of that. And know that we have a lot more work to do. Wrote down just a few things. To me, the number one thing, I want to end with a lot of positivity, know that that's all there, and there's always more that we could be doing. We still continue to have projects that fail to move forward, and that's disappointing. To me, my top priorities coming out of here, and I think that maybe we'll talk about them as a group for what we want to tackle in the new year. But residential parking downtown, I think really needs to be a larger conversation. We weren't able to move forward, what this group agreed with, we weren't able to move forward through the council, the removal of parking minimums in a downtown. I am increasingly convinced that that is the most critical tool we could have to improve development in downtown Franklin. And part of why there's hesitation to move forward with that is a lack of a existing program for managing residential parking downtown. Most communities, including very suburban communities, have some form of residential parking pass downtown. I really think it's time that Franklin seriously look into implementing such a policy so that we can reduce new on-site parking in our downtown district. A few other things, I do want to continue to revisit minimum lot sizes, as well as continue to revisit 40R, which was one of the recommendations of Franklin for All. So those would be my top three. But yay, appreciate all the hard work on this.
thank you, Kobe. Definitely, I like the idea of keeping these updates and this timeline and somewhere where people can see it. Especially the stuff about New Style, that is just, the history is really a good thing. And of course, the MBTA community stuff. Councilor Chandler, you have anything?
Just quickly, I'm glad that we got all this done, this MBTA, because obviously there's going to be other towns that are going to be fighting with themselves about this, and it's just another thing that we don't have to do. A lot of people worked very hard. And Jonathan Burke, I'll be listening to Berkey, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm glad you turned me on to that.
All right.
Excellent. That's good.
But thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Brian. Patrick, anything else to add? No? All right, thank you so much for your updates. It's pretty stunning, some of it, right? How much work all these things take, especially when they're contaminated. Yeah. But thank you so much. Amy, thank you. Amy and Brian. And with that, I would accept the motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.